Perhaps many of us have heard the phrase, "boys should not cry," during our childhood. That statement, handed down through generations like a strict command, carries both a warmth and a chill. I vividly recall the image of a small boy with wide, innocent eyes stumbling on a muddy path behind his home. Instead of receiving comfort, he was met with a cold, unyielding gaze from his father, who sternly reminded him, "Boys should not cry." Those words cut through the boy's tender heart like a knife, gradually forging a misguided belief. To be a man, one must always hide the pain and never show any emotion. He grew up in the way society had prescribed, learning to swallow his tears and conceal his vulnerabilities in the shadows of his insecurities. Behind that facade of strength, he constantly felt isolated and powerless, as if every emotional wound had to be hidden, so that no one would ever see the true person he was. As he matured into a man, he found himself facing overwhelming pressures from every direction: the demands of work, the responsibilities of family, and the unspoken expectations of society. Every day he encountered challenges not only of the body but also of the spirit. On the outside, he appeared resilient and unbreakable, like an impenetrable fortress. Yet within, accumulated sorrows and disappointments slowly transformed into a storm of anger and exhaustion, leaving him in a state of unrelenting tension. In quiet moments, as night falls and sighs echo through an empty room, he wonders if he will ever have the freedom to live truly as himself. Can anyone understand that beneath that hardened exterior lies a fragile soul, yearning for love and solace? These thoughts ignite a deep desire for change, a longing for the day when he can openly express his true self without having to strain under invisible pressures. Through this series of videos, I want to tell not just the story of one man, but of millions. Individuals who struggle against societal stereotypes and are forced to wear a mask of strength while their inner hearts remain as delicate as fragile sheets of paper. Their stories, though filled with hardships and pain, also carry an unyielding belief in a brighter tomorrow, a time when society will listen and accept the truth. A man has the right to be vulnerable, the right to be loved, and the right to fully experience his emotions. Join me on a journey to explore the hidden corners of the male soul, where every story stands as a vivid testament to human strength, a strength that sometimes comes from knowing when to pause, listen, and truly feel oneself. Picture a young boy standing in the middle of a schoolyard. He's just fallen during a soccer game. His knee is scraped, and his eyes are brimming with tears. But instead of comfort, he hears his classmates laughing and an adult's voice calling out, "Boys should not cry, toughen up." In that tiny moment, something shifts inside him. He learns that pain is not meant to be shown. He stops crying, not because it doesn't hurt, but because he's afraid of being seen as weak. This is the first step in a long journey of invisible expectations that society places on a man's shoulders, long before he even understands what it means to be a man. These expectations are not clearly stated, but they're everywhere, embedded in glances, casual comments, and unspoken rules. A man is expected to be strong, rational, emotionally controlled, and successful. Failure is shameful. Vulnerability is a flaw. As boys grow into men, these expectations don't fade, they intensify. A man is praised for his endurance, for carrying the weight of his family, for keeping his emotions in check. But rarely does anyone ask, is he happy? Is he tired? Is he holding it together or falling apart inside? Imagine a father who just lost his job. He wants to talk to his wife but holds it in. She already has enough to worry about, he tells himself. So he stays silent, smiles at dinner, kisses his kids goodnight, and lies awake at 2 a.m., wondering if he's failed not just them, but himself. A husband battling depression still drives his wife to work, pays the bills, keeps the routine. But no one sees the quiet struggle in his eyes. When he's asked how he's doing, he replies, "I'm fine," because that's what he believes he's supposed to say. That's what a real man would say. These invisible expectations teach men to wear masks. Masks of stability, achievement, strength. They learn to laugh while they're breaking, to say I'm okay when they're anything but. They learn to bury their feelings so deep, they sometimes forget how to find them again. But what few people realize is this: these expectations are slowly eroding their inner lives. When a man cannot show emotion, cannot ask for help, cannot be vulnerable without judgment, he becomes a stranger in his own life. Alone, disconnected, and in some tragic cases these pressures lead to the darkest places: depression, addiction, and even suicide. In many countries, the suicide rate among men is significantly higher than that of women. Not because men are weaker, but because they are given fewer safe spaces to open up, to grieve, to fall apart without shame. They're not short on strength, they're short on room to breathe. But instead of blaming society, we can begin with small changes. Tell the men in your life that it's okay to be tired, okay to be vulnerable, okay to cry. Let your son feel his emotions without labeling him too soft. Give men permission to be human, not just strong but whole, because a man is not made of stone. He needs love, understanding, and protection just like anyone else. And sometimes, the bravest thing a man can do is to admit the truth. I'm exhausted. I need someone to lean on. When society finally embraces the truth that emotion has no gender, only humanity, then and only then will we truly offer men the freedom they deserve. Not just in action, but in their hearts. We are all too familiar with the image of the modern man, always steady, always resilient, always enduring and carrying the weight of everything. This is the ideal image that society frequently builds for them, an unspoken standard that every man seems to have to live up to, regardless of whether they feel strong enough or not. From the time they are boys, they are taught, boys should not cry. Boys have to be strong. Don't be weak. These words, whether intentionally or accidentally said, carve deep into a child's mind, creating an unbreakable stereotype of what it means to be a man in the eyes of society. They learn that emotions are something strange and not meant to be shown. Pain, weakness, fear, these are things that must be hidden, as they signify failure and unworthiness. As a boy grows into a man, the story doesn't change. Society continues to uphold the invisible expectations. A man is not allowed to be weak. This forces many men to live in a constant state of having to appear strong, even when they are faced with personal crises, work stress, or family issues. Any sign of weakness is viewed as a failure, as a disgrace to the image of a man in society. A man might fight through his entire life with emotional burdens that he is not allowed to express. He might remain silent, endure and pretend to be fine. Even when faced with personal pain, he might not seek help from his friends or family, nor share what he's going through. Instead, he carries everything alone, believing that this is what it means to be a real man. However, the price for this silence is steep. When a man is not allowed to be weak, he starts to face serious psychological consequences. He becomes isolated, gradually losing the ability to truly connect with those around him. To maintain the image of being strong, he hides his anxiety and fears inside. Yet these emotions do not disappear, they are merely suppressed, making him feel trapped in his own life. Psychological studies have shown that men tend to keep their emotional struggles inside longer than women. They cannot admit their weaknesses because they fear being looked down upon or judged. This leads them to fall into depression, unable to express what they're feeling. The loneliness, helplessness, and exhaustion in their hearts get buried beneath a tough exterior they are forced to maintain. Many men, when facing hardship, do not reach out for help. Instead, they fall into self-doubt and anxiety. They ask themselves, I can't let others know I'm weak. I can't let them think I'm not strong enough. This mindset leads to a loss of direction and makes the feeling of failure even more pronounced. We can see this clearly in men who face career or family crises. They fear that if they admit they can't handle things anymore, they will be seen as inadequate or as failures. This keeps them silent, unable to share their struggles, and of course, it only worsens their issues. So how do we break this vicious cycle? First, we must understand that weakness is not something negative. It is a part of being human, and no one can remain strong forever. When a man feels tired, when he faces a crisis, the best thing he can do is allow himself to be weak, to cry, to admit his emotions without fearing judgment. Men too need to be treated as human beings, with the right to express their emotions without suffering societal judgment. Organizations and communities need to create safe spaces where men can share and express their feelings without feeling ashamed. Open conversations about mental health, emotions, and the struggles men face are crucial. Only when they are given the opportunity to speak the truth inside them can they live authentically, maintain mental health, and have a fulfilling life. In today's world, financial security is often equated with personal success. From a young age, many of us are taught that to be successful, we must have wealth, a stable income, and financial independence. While financial stability is undoubtedly important, the constant pressure to meet societal standards of success can be overwhelming, especially for individuals who face financial difficulties. This creates an invisible link between financial pressure and personal value, where one's worth is often determined by how much they earn or how well they manage their finances. From advertisements to social media, the messages we receive on a daily basis often center around the idea that money equals happiness and success. We are constantly bombarded with images of wealthy individuals leading lavish lifestyles, driving expensive cars, and living in luxurious homes. These portrayals of success create unrealistic expectations for many people, leaving them feeling inadequate if they do not meet these standards. For many, financial success has become the ultimate measure of personal value. If someone is struggling financially, they may feel that their worth as a person is diminished. This connection between money and self-worth is not only reinforced by society, but also by personal experiences and cultural narratives. The belief that, if you don't have money, you don't matter, is a painful and pervasive thought that many people grapple with, often in silence. When an individual faces financial pressure, it can lead to feelings of shame, guilt, and inadequacy. Society often views financial struggles as a personal failure, a sign that someone is not trying hard enough, or that they are not disciplined enough. This stigma can cause people to internalize these feelings, leading them to question their abilities and their value as individuals. One of the most damaging effects of financial pressure is the way it erodes self-esteem. Self-worth becomes entangled with financial success, making it difficult for individuals to see their value outside of their monetary achievements. This can create a vicious cycle. Financial stress leads to poor mental health, which then further exacerbates the financial strain. When someone is trapped in this cycle, they often feel like there is no way out. The more they struggle financially, the less they feel like they are enough. For men, financial pressure can be particularly intense. From a young age, they are taught to be providers, to uphold the traditional role of the breadwinner. This societal expectation places a heavy burden on men, as they are often seen as the ones responsible for their family's financial well-being. When they are unable to meet these expectations, they may feel that they are failing in their most important role. This pressure is compounded by the pervasive narrative that men should never show vulnerability. Admitting financial struggles can feel like a direct assault on their masculinity, leading many men to suffer in silence. This often results in emotional and mental strain, as they attempt to maintain a facade of strength and success, despite the reality of their financial situation. When we define our self-worth by our financial situation, we risk losing sight of what truly makes us valuable as individuals. Human beings are complex and multidimensional, with qualities that cannot be measured in dollars. A person's worth should not be contingent upon their salary, assets, or possessions. Yet in a society where the value of a person is often linked to their economic standing, it becomes increasingly difficult to see beyond the numbers. This is where the danger lies. As individuals, we may become so consumed by the pursuit of wealth that we lose touch with our true selves. Our goals shift from personal fulfillment, relationships, and emotional well-being to acquiring material wealth as a measure of success. In doing so, we ignore the deeper, more meaningful aspects of life, our passions, our purpose, and our connection with others. The obsession with financial success can also lead to burnout, as individuals work relentlessly to achieve goals that may not bring true happiness. The constant drive for more money, more possessions, and a higher status can leave a person feeling empty and unfulfilled. The cycle of chasing financial goals at the cost of personal well-being often leads to frustration and dissatisfaction. As people realize that material success does not guarantee emotional fulfillment, it's crucial to recognize that financial pressure should not define a person's value. Our true worth lies in who we are, what we contribute to the world, and how we make others feel. Self-worth is about more than what is in your bank account. It is about your integrity, your kindness, your creativity, and your ability to build meaningful connections with others. To break free from the grip of financial pressure, we must start by redefining what success means. Rather than focusing solely on money, we should place value on personal growth, emotional intelligence, and our ability to build relationships and create positive change. Success is not just about accumulating wealth. It's about living authentically and finding fulfillment in the things that truly matter. In addition, seeking help and opening up about financial struggles can relieve much of the burden associated with them. By talking to others, whether through counseling, support groups, or simply sharing experiences with loved ones, we can alleviate the isolation that often comes with financial stress. This shift in perspective, acknowledging that one's worth is not defined by their financial situation, can help alleviate the psychological toll of financial pressure and foster a sense of empowerment and self-acceptance. In the fast-paced modern world, loneliness among men is emerging as a silent epidemic, a hidden struggle that few acknowledge openly. Despite outward appearances of strength and resilience, many men grapple with profound feelings of isolation. This loneliness is not just about being physically alone. Is about the emotional isolation that stems from societal expectations, cultural norms, and personal experiences. From a young age, boys are taught to be independent, to suppress emotions, and to prioritize self-reliance over vulnerability. The classic admonition of "boys don't cry" instills a belief that expressing feelings is a sign of weakness. Over time, this conditioning builds an emotional barrier where genuine connection and openness are sacrificed for the sake of preserving an image of stoicism. As a result, many modern men find themselves trapped behind walls of silence, unable to express their innermost struggles. As men progress into adulthood, the demands of life compound these early lessons. Professional pressures, the need to provide for a family, and the relentless pursuit of success often take precedence over personal well-being. The modern workplace, with its emphasis on competition and achievement, rarely provides the space for men to reveal their vulnerabilities. In this environment, expressing emotions can be misinterpreted as a lack of commitment or capability. Consequently, men may choose to isolate themselves emotionally, even when they crave meaningful connections. Moreover, modern technology, which is supposed to bring people closer together, paradoxically contributes to the isolation of modern men. Social media platforms create an illusion of connection through likes and comments, yet these interactions rarely offer the deep empathic support that individuals need. Instead, comparisons and curated images of success further alienate those who struggle with their own realities. In this digital age, many men find that the more they engage online, the more disconnected they feel from authentic, face-to-face relationships. This loneliness is exacerbated by societal stereotypes that valorize rugged independence over collaborative vulnerability. Men are often expected to be the pillars of strength in their communities, a role that discourages any display of emotional need. The traditional archetype of the manly man, unwavering, emotionally detached, and self-sufficient, continues to be a standard against which many men measure themselves. Those who deviate from this model risk being labeled as weak or unmanly, leading to further withdrawal from social interaction and emotional expression. The impact of this isolation is far-reaching. On an emotional level, loneliness can lead to depression, anxiety, and a diminished sense of self-worth. The inability to share personal struggles can intensify feelings of alienation and despair, creating a vicious cycle that is hard to break. Without a supportive network, men may resort to unhealthy coping mechanisms such as substance abuse or excessive work to fill the void left by the lack of genuine human connection. Interestingly, this state of isolation is not merely an individual failing, but reflects broader cultural and societal trends. The rapid social changes of recent decades, shifting family dynamics, declining community structures, and the erosion of traditional support systems have left many men without a sense of belonging. In a society that increasingly values individualism over collective solidarity, the old bonds that once provided comfort and support are dissolving. Men, who were traditionally supported by close-knit communities and extended family networks, now face a fragmented social landscape where forging deep connections is more challenging than ever. Yet there is hope for change. Recognizing the profound loneliness that modern men experience is the first step toward healing. There is a growing movement that encourages men to embrace vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness. Support groups, mental health initiatives, and open conversations about emotional well-being are gradually breaking down the stigma surrounding male vulnerability. By sharing their stories and seeking connection, men are beginning to reclaim their emotional lives and dismantle the barriers of isolation. Furthermore, redefining masculinity to include empathy, emotional intelligence, and the capacity for deep connection can pave the way for a more fulfilling life. When society acknowledges that true strength lies in the ability to be authentic and to seek support when needed, men can finally break free from the constraints of outdated norms. It is essential that communities, workplaces, and educational institutions foster environments where men feel safe to express their feelings without fear of judgment. From the moment a child is born, the seeds of identity are sown by those who care for him. In many cultures, there exists an unspoken belief that boys must be stoic, resilient, and unflinching. As parents and guardians, it is crucial to challenge this narrative and nurture a more compassionate, open expression of emotions in our sons. Raising a son should involve teaching him that feelings are not a sign of weakness, but rather a fundamental part of being human. The traditional mantra, "Boys should not cry," has long been echoed in households around the world. Often, well-meaning parents repeat these words with the intention of helping their sons develop toughness and resilience. However, this approach can unintentionally instill a damaging belief that emotions are dangerous or even shameful if expressed. When a young boy is repeatedly told to stifle his tears or hide his sadness, he learns to associate vulnerability with failure. Over time, these internalized messages can lead to emotional isolation, making it harder for him to form authentic relationships later in life. Encouraging a son to express his emotions does not mean fostering perpetual sensitivity or unbridled sentimentality. Rather, it is about creating an environment where he feels safe to acknowledge and articulate his feelings. When children see their parents openly discussing their own emotions, whether joy, fear, sadness, or frustration, they learn that these experiences are natural and acceptable. For instance, a father who shares his own struggles and expresses empathy for his son's distress shows that vulnerability is not only permissible, but is also a pathway to connection and understanding. Moreover, allowing a son to explore and understand his emotions can be a powerful tool for personal growth. When boys are granted the freedom to express themselves, they learn to identify their feelings and manage them in healthy ways. This emotional literacy is essential not only for personal well-being, but also for navigating social and professional relationships later in life. A boy who understands his own emotional landscape is better equipped to empathize with others, leading to stronger, more meaningful connections. The role of educators and mentors is also pivotal in dismantling the notion that emotions are taboo for boys. Schools and extracurricular programs should encourage open dialogue about feelings and mental health. Teachers can integrate activities that promote emotional expression, such as journaling, art, and group discussions, into the curriculum. Such initiatives help reinforce the idea that emotions are not something to be hidden, but rather a vital aspect of personal development and interpersonal communication. Parents, too, can benefit from self-reflection and education on the impact of gender stereotypes. By consciously avoiding phrases that diminish the value of emotional expression, and by celebrating moments of vulnerability, they can model a healthier version of masculinity. Celebrating a son's ability to express compassion or to share his feelings can foster an environment where he feels supported and understood. In doing so, parents empower him to see that being emotional is not a liability, but a strength. Ultimately, breaking the cycle of emotional repression is about rewriting the narrative of what it means to be a man. It is about teaching our sons that emotions are a natural and valuable part of the human experience. In a world that often prizes strength and stoicism, showing empathy and emotional openness can be a revolutionary act. By creating spaces, both at home and in the community, where boys are encouraged to be vulnerable, we pave the way for a generation of men who are emotionally intelligent, empathetic, and resilient in the truest sense. In today's society, the expectation that one must have complete control over every aspect of life has become a silent yet relentless burden. This pressure, often imposed by both external forces and internalized beliefs, forces individuals, especially men, to believe that vulnerability is unacceptable and that true strength lies in absolute mastery. Yet the reality of human existence is far more nuanced and complex than a facade of unyielding control. From a young age, many of us are taught that success depends on our ability to command and manage our environment. Parents, educators, and even peers often reinforce the notion that control equates to competence. In many cases, this idea is deeply intertwined with traditional views of masculinity, where being in control is synonymous with being strong and dependable. However, this constant need for control can become a double-edged sword. It may propel us toward achievements and efficiency, but it can also lead to intense stress, anxiety, and emotional isolation. The pressure to be in control is not merely about managing daily tasks, it extends to every sphere of life. Whether it is maintaining a successful career, managing relationships, or even handling personal emotions, the expectation is that one should always be the master of their domain. When things deviate from this ideal, when the uncontrollable elements of life emerge, the result can be a profound sense of failure. This sense of inadequacy stems from the belief that if one is not in complete control, then they are not truly competent or worthy. This burden is particularly pronounced in modern workplaces, where the demand for constant productivity and decisive leadership can leave little room for mistakes or vulnerability. The professional world often glorifies the image of the infallible leader, who navigates challenges effortlessly, even though such perfection is impossible to sustain. The relentless drive to be in control often results in burnout and a deep-seated fear of failure, trapping individuals in a cycle of overwork and self-criticism. On a personal level, the need to control everything can undermine one's ability to form genuine connections. When an individual is consumed by the need to manage every detail of life, there is little space left for spontaneity, creativity, or emotional intimacy. Relationships may become transactional, with partners, friends, or family members feeling sidelined or undervalued. The inability to let go or trust others can lead to isolation, as the person in control becomes increasingly distant and detached from those who care about them. Furthermore, the obsession with control can stifle personal growth. Life is inherently unpredictable, and much of what is beautiful about human experience comes from embracing uncertainty and change. Yet those burdened by the need for control often resist change, clinging to rigid routines and strategies in the hope of preserving order. This resistance not only limits new opportunities and experiences, but also hampers the development of resilience, the ability to adapt and thrive in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Breaking free from the tyranny of total control requires a significant shift in mindset. It begins with accepting that vulnerability is not a weakness, but rather a necessary component of genuine human connection and personal growth. Recognizing that perfection is an illusion allows individuals to embrace uncertainty and to find strength in flexibility. By letting go of the myth that control is the ultimate measure of success, one can begin to appreciate the beauty of spontaneity and the rich complexity of life. Ultimately, the burden of having to control everything is a heavy load that can diminish one's quality of life, both personally and professionally. Learning to accept that not everything can or should be controlled is a liberating step toward a more balanced and fulfilling existence. Embracing uncertainty, fostering open relationships, and celebrating vulnerability are essential for breaking free from this self-imposed prison, allowing individuals to live more authentically and with true inner strength. In the end, the social pressures placed on men are not merely challenges they face in isolation. They are deeply embedded within the fabric of our culture, constantly shaping the way men view themselves and interact with the world. The expectation of perpetual strength, emotional restraint, and financial success can suffocate the very essence of their humanity. Men are often taught to suppress their vulnerabilities, to remain stoic in the face of adversity, and to carry the weight of expectations without showing signs of strain. This, in turn, creates an invisible burden that affects not only their mental health, but also their relationships and sense of self-worth. When societal norms dictate that men must always be strong, the result is an internal conflict where emotions are relegated to the shadows. Vulnerability, once a cornerstone of authentic human connection, becomes something to hide or suppress. This emotional suppression can lead to isolation, as men struggle to express their true feelings or seek support, fearing judgment or rejection. It perpetuates a cycle of silence and internalized pressure, where men often feel trapped by their own need to conform. However, there is hope. Challenging these outdated norms and creating spaces for emotional expression and vulnerability is essential for changing the narrative around masculinity. It begins with a collective effort to redefine what it means to be strong and masculine. True strength lies not in hiding one's emotions but in acknowledging them, in navigating life's challenges with authenticity and resilience. Society must embrace the idea that vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage, and it is necessary for growth. Ultimately, the pressure to conform to these societal expectations can be overwhelming, but by recognizing the impact of these pressures, we can start to break free from them. Men deserve the freedom to express themselves fully, without fear of judgment, and to build meaningful connections based on emotional honesty. Only when these pressures are lifted can men begin to lead lives that are richer, more fulfilling, and true to their authentic selves. By allowing men to embrace their emotions, we create a society where strength is measured by the courage to be vulnerable, and where every individual is empowered to live in a way that is genuine and whole.